It's time to loosen these lug nuts. Let's see what we're working with here in the engine bay. The biggest problem with this car is the rat infestation. I'm really not sure how much you can see, how much shows up good on camera. There's the fuse box over there. Hey everybody, I'm Nick and I'm super excited to share with you my new project, this 1966 Ford Thunderbird. The reason I say it was a barn find is because about 2 years ago this thing started this step of its journey. It was sitting in a field in Hamul since the year 2000 till about January or February of 2022. It spent pretty much all of that time, as far as I understand, underneath a carport. About 3/4 of it was covered. There's a little bit of fading here on the hood as a result of excessive sun. We get real hot summers here in California, and Hamul particularly gets hot. So this thing's got a new lease on life now. I'm going to be working to put it back together and restore it. So until 2 years ago, I would have considered this thing a barn find. My buddy Ethan, who you've seen on the channel, picked this thing up. He bought a ton of parts for it, spent a few grand on parts. Life and some stuff happened, and he lost the energy and ability to continue pushing forward on it. So I am going to take over where he left off and get the car a little bit further apart, and then mostly start putting it back together. So you can see this thing has a ton of parts. It's got some extra things for the fenders. The interior, some of it's not beautiful, but it's complete. One of the things that Ethan spent money on, he had the seats reupholstered. So I'm gonna have to do something with the door cards. You've got damage there. They're cracked and starting to fall apart in some places, but they're complete. All of the trim is here. All of the trim for the inside of the car is here. We got a new carpet kit. We got a bunch of stuff. Ethan actually bought pretty much everything to redo the suspension on this thing. We have new shocks, we have new leaf springs, we have new bushings for the front control arms, we have everything except rotors for the brakes. We got a bunch of stuff. So I'm gonna really be able to go through this car. Let's see what we're working with here in the engine bay. 4-barrel. I don't know if that's original or not. I'm guessing not, because it looks like it's on a spacer. Maybe that'll be rebuildable. I don't know very much about what that's supposed to be. Ethan put new plug wires on it, new plugs in it. We actually had it running at one point, but not running. It was running okay, but we only ran it for about 30 seconds. The fan pulled a bunch of crap out of the radiator, and we're probably gonna end up replacing this radiator. Overall, this motor's probably healthy. I believe that it ran when it was parked. Admittedly, that was over 20 years ago. Actually 24 years ago, almost 25 years ago. The biggest problem with this car is the rat infestation that it's suffered. So you can see some of this like corrosion and weird deterioration. I honestly think that's due to exposure to rats and stuff. You've got some crustiness in places, some rat's nest in places. They were definitely inside the car. You can get actually a lot to clean it up, but there's so much more. Probably a few solid days just of cleanup of this stuff. So that's going to be the first step of the project, is to empty it, pressure wash the engine bay, degrease, really get the engine bay massively cleaned up. I'm not going to worry about running air conditioning for the moment, though long term, if I keep this car, that's something that I will want to have. The brakes are currently not together, but there's a bunch of new parts, new calipers, a bunch of stuff for the front brakes. Overall, I'm pretty excited about this thing. You got some interior parts, this vacuum AC control thing. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff on this car. I'm actually pretty excited about it. My goal for this car, though, is to have it at Fab Fords by the 21st of April. Today's March 14th, so that gives me, I'm not sure if Fab Fords is the 20th or the 21st of April. It's a Sunday. That gives me just over a month. I'm going to call it a month, like 35 days or something like that, to Fab Fords. So that's a big goal to me. Fab Fords is about 100 miles away at Irwindale. The car, I have it, we're in San Diego, and it's going to be a lot of work. The thing ran for about 30 seconds. It actually seemed pretty healthy for about 30 seconds about a year and a half ago, and hasn't really had very much happen to it since. Ethan and I threw the front suspension together enough to have it towed over here. He had that all torn apart, but I got to do brakes. I got to get the engine running and driving. I got to make sure the cooling system is bulletproof. I probably need to do an oil change. I got to ask him if he did that. And then just get it cleaned up enough, get a seat in it, get the dash in it, and fix the wiring enough that this thing can be taken. I'm really not sure how much you can see, how much shows up good on camera. There's the fuse box over there, the factory fuse box. It's just honestly horrible. Everything about it's horrible over there. But we got a lot of work to do. Unfortunately, Ethan felt he had to cut some of the wires while he was doing this. I don't know what all he cut. There's another thing that's cut right there. Definitely gonna have made the job bigger. Ethan's plan, some more stuff cut here. Ethan's plan was to replace the wiring harness. It looks like that's probably the only plan that will work right now. Both good and bad. This car is heavily optioned. It had power windows, had everything power, very fancy for its time. So there's going to be a lot of work to do on some of that stuff. My goal is to honestly spend as little as I can and have this thing be back on the road, nice, close to how it would have originally driven. I'm probably going to do a good video putting in a universal wiring harness in this thing. That's probably going to be several days worth of work to do right, and I do want to do it right. But immediately my goal is to get this thing to Fab Fords, even if I have to start it with a screwdriver and just shut it off by pulling a wire out of the distributor or something like that. That's the goal. Get this thing to Fab Fords and have fun with it.